Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Fine. So we start today the very important topic and the last topic on our course. Of course, there are, as I said already, three subtopics within this. So we will discuss all of them. Now, first we understand the fiscal policy, then we understand the monetary policy, and then we go on to the exchange rate. Now, this is not the three. Three will be of the three. This is one. However, before we discuss either fiscal policy or monetary policy, we have to understand why they are made and the both of them. What is the objective of having a monetary and a fiscal policy? As I said in the last class, the objective of building a fiscal policy or a monetary policy is to stabilize the economy. Why does the economy need specialization? Because it has a characteristics which is known as business cycle. The business cycle basically, everyone please mute your audios if you have not done so. The business cycle is actually a so if we look at the business cycle, we find that it is a fluctuation in the economic activity. That is, the level of economy fluctuates. Ideal would be, of course, that it is stable. And through monetary and fiscal policy, we try to achieve that ideal condition where the economy is stable, because any fluctuation, whether it goes up or down, is actually in the long run harmful. Because if you are going to go overboard, go too much, then at some point or the other, you have got to come back, and then that will be painful. So the best would be if we could somehow stabilize the economic activities, and that is achieved through the fiscal and the monetary policy. Now, if you look at the economic activity fluctuations, there is a pattern in this. Yeah. Who is that? Mute your audio. So we actually this who is not muted the audio. They have everybody is mute. Okay, then this appears to be a problem which is there in the connection. So when we look at the business cycle, we find that it is a basically a sine graph. Now this sine graph that you see, there are two axis is, on the x-axis is the time, and on the y-axis is the economic activity, which we can say measure in terms of GDP or any other parameters of economic activity, whether it is doing, how it is doing, how it is performing. So if we look at the sine curve, we find that the first stage is where it is rising initially from this point. As it rises, we call this, since it is increasing all the way to here, we call it the growth phase. This is the first phase. Can you see that? Then we reach the top of the mountain, which we call it as the boom or the peak. This is where the activity of economic activity is maximum. And then the activities start declining after this phase because it experiences a recession. So this phase, when it is declining, but still there is a positive growth, or there is a positivity, that is known as recession. It reaches this point and then it goes down below the level, which means now there is negative growth. So this phase is called depression, and it reaches a peak at the bottom, which is known as the slump or a trough. Spelling is right. Trough, T-R-O-U-G-H. Yeah. Okay. Trough, and then it starts recovering. It is still not reached the positive, but it is improving every time. So that phase is known as recovery. And I no need to tell you, after recovery will again come growth, peak, recession, depression, slump, and this goes on. Problem is, we don't know how long it takes. Sometimes it takes 100 years, sometimes 10 years for the phase to go across. So this time is actually the question mark. So we don't know about the time, but we do know that this is how the pattern goes. So obviously, when there is growth, we have to be very careful that we have to prolong the peak. So you may grow a little bit less, but make it as long as possible. And the peak should come somewhere as late as possible. So what happens is, for a long time, you have a stable policy. And when there is a slump anticipated, we try to avoid the slump. So after recession, we may go into growth. And for that, we need to decrease the depression and the slump, and then it becomes smaller, and very quickly it recovers and we go into a growth. So that is the ideal. So when we look at this, we understand the role of monetary and fiscal policy, both. So when we look at the economic activities, recession, peaking is boom, and of course, it is measured by the rate of change in GDP. Now, when we introduce policy interventions, so the policy basically interrupts this so that we reduce the severity of the fluctuations and to stabilize the economy, then that is the objective of introducing both the policies, fiscal policy and monetary policy. That is why we have it. So as far as the business cycle is concerned, another question is, why does the business cycle act as a sine curve? Why does it go up and go down? To understand this, let us understand the economic policies itself. So when we have an economy which is growing, how does it happen? How does growth happen? So think of a firm, if we consider a firm, and then all the firms are behaving in a similar manner. So the firms go to the market and there is a demand for a certain product. So they get orders, they bring the orders to the firm goes to the production and asks for the production. So the firm is installed with a capacity and it produces the product. Then there is growth in the economic activity. So when there's growth in the economic activity, again the salespeople come back with an increased order. Now to meet this increased order, they find that they need to have new machineries. So they go to the bank for money. The bank gives a credit amount, and on that credit amount they purchase the additional machineries required, additional people, land, all the factors of production, and they increase the production supply to the market. Again there is growth. So again they come back, again another credit is taken. Bank is very happy because you have repaid the last time. So at once they come quickly give you the money, and you quickly grow and you start supplying more. Again there is growth. Again the same story keeps repeating. It's all pretty fine. But when we reach a point where actually the salespeople have been put under pressure, give growth, and actually there is no growth in the market. So that is the peak has already been reached. So when peak has been reached and they get additional orders and they come and give it to the firm goes to the bank happily gives the credit. They make the goods also, but this goods is not going to sell because there was no growth. And when that happens, you are unable to pay the bank. When you are not able to pay the bank starts putting pressure on you to repay the earlier loans also. So instead of growth, now there is a recession. Bank is also after you start attempting cost cutting. And when there is cost cutting, when you reduce workforce, when you reduce machineries, when you sell off some machineries, obviously your production is going to fall, and that goes into a spiral now. As it was going into a spiral upwards, now the spiral goes downwards. There is mistrust, distrust. You don't believe your salespeople. The salespeople are confused why the market is not supporting. The people in the market also are confused. The market is not growing, so they start reducing the orders, and the bank starts saying, I'm not going to give you any more money. And all this creates a recession which goes into a depression, because the spiraling effect, it goes again repeatedly. This happens. You again try to sell and it's not selling. People have started avoiding placing orders. And then when it goes into a recession, it goes into a slump. When it reaches the slump, then people realize that now after this only a little bit improvement can happen, and that is where the recovery happens. And after recovery, again growth, spiral upwards again. So that is the reason why the business cycle happens at all. That is the reason why business cycle takes place, so to say. And obviously, this escalation, which is spiraled, and then the de-escalation, which is spiraled again, spiral effect, this all gets converted into the sine curve that we see. So this is why the business cycle happens per se. Now, when we look at the stabilization policy, we find that the reliance is on the demand management policies in the short run. So what we try to manipulate through this policies is to manipulate the demand that arises out of the people. So what happens to the demand is what we can control. If we see that there is a growth, we try to control the demand. When we see that there is a recession, we try to increase the demand. So obviously there will be different fiscal policies for different stages of business cycle, as well as monetary policy. And these could be expansionary or restrictive. When it is the demand, when it is restrictive, we try to control the demand. This is the two policies that happens within the fiscal policy and the monetary policy. Now let us look at the fiscal policy. The fiscal policy actually has four basic instruments. That may not be there on the slide, but you can note it down. There are four basic instruments of fiscal policy. The first one is government earnings. Okay. The first instrument of fiscal policy is government earnings. The second instrument is government expenditure. The third is government loans and borrowings, both international and domestic. And the fourth is government's fiscal deficit. Now let us inspect each of the four instruments properly. Please note down the four instruments because that is what I'll be looking for and that is what you are expected to write. It's not there on the slide, so if you look at the slide, you will not get it. So you have got to, yeah.
What is the fourth one, sir?
The fourth one is known as fiscal deficit. I'll be elaborating all four, don't worry. The fourth one is known as fiscal deficit.
So can you please repeat all the four once again?
Definitely. The first one is government earnings. The second one is government expenditure. The third is government's loans and borrowings, both international and domestic. This is the third one. And the fourth one is government's fiscal deficit. So I hope all of you have got all the four. So now let us examine each what it is. So government earnings. So obviously when you buy a ticket of a zoo also the government earns. When the Navaratnas make a profit, the government earns. When you pay a toll tax on the road or on the bridge, the government earns. So there are many ways in which the government can earn, whether it could be in terms of fines imposed by the police, the fees that you pay for a toll or for entry to a zoo, or the profits made by the public sector undertakings. All these are government earnings. However, these earnings which I have listed are very small, but they are earnings, no doubt about that. But they are comparatively small.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So what about taxes that we pay?
Yeah, I was coming to that. Taxes is the major component of government earnings. You are right. But although small, we have to mention these also because these are also government earnings, right? These may be compared to the amount of tax which the government earns. This may be in the range of say 2% or 3%. But even then, this earning is definitely there. And therefore, when we talk of government earnings, we cannot neglect this. Because usually if you read books, this is completely neglected. So I've highlighted it for your understanding purpose. As sometimes you also tend to neglect this. They are there. But of course, there is no doubt that the government major earnings come from taxes, both indirect tax and direct tax. Now, of course, GST. And GST, customs, all these earnings goes to the government coffers, and it is this earning which the government has. This is the money which is the earning of the government. Just like a person who gets a salary, the government gets the money through the taxes and through the earnings which happen in small places also. So this taxes are the major component of all this policy, how much to earn, what should be the profit, now how much tolls, All these are decided by the government. And that decision making which occurs in the government to increase its earning is known as fiscal policy. So in fiscal policy, we develop the level of income which the government should have. They know what is their earnings and they know what is the level of taxation that they are going to impose. So a decision to uh, waive off taxes or to impose taxes on certain products and goods on certain category of earners is all decided by the government, and this decision making happens as part of the fiscal policy. So in fiscal policy, we decide how much or what percentage of taxes is to be applied on which product and which category of people, which category of earners. Of course, you will see that when we talk about taxes, there are different types of taxes, and we have a certain type which is existing in our country. But basically, the fiscal policy decides the level of taxes, how much of taxes. It can decide to keep certain items out of the purview of tax or to increase or impose tax on certain products. So when this happens, we know through the laws of demand, and I have shown you how there can be a deadweight loss. I have shown you how when we increase the taxes, certain amount goes to the government, but that is always at the expense of the uh, sellers and the buyers. There, and of course, the deadweight loss, which happens. So these three components are the loss, and the government earns through imposing a tax. So this is one part of the fiscal policy where the ministry, through the budget every year, when they make a proposal, the budget is the plan. That is the plan, how much we are going to tax, how much they have actually taxed, and what is the earning. For that, you will have to refer to the economic survey. In the economic survey, it is written how much through imposing of taxes the government has made an earning. And of course, through the other sources also. Together, what is the government earning is all given in the economic survey. And the plan which is made in the budgetary provisions, and that is part of the fiscal policy. Fiscal policy allows the government, when they are making a fiscal policy, to increase or decrease tax. Both the decisions of increasing or decreasing tax will have a direct impact on the demand. So when they need to do what will depend on the business cycle in which they are. Coming to the next, we have the government spendings. Obviously, the government spending is important. Why is it important? Because if the government does not spend, the economy is in shambles. Because government is a large part of the economy. Usually the government's activities, like there are two parts of the government spendings. One is called the non-plan expenditure, and the other is known as the planned expenditure. The non-planned expenditures are there which does not fetch you returns, like salaries of the people who are in government employment and building infrastructure for housing the offices of the government and things like that. These are also spendings, no doubt, but they are non-plan expenditure and they do not lead to growth. However, there is a part of government spending which leads to growth because there are returns which will be coming from them. For example, construction of roads, over bridges, construction of housing for developing housing societies by the PWD or by other government agencies, and then selling it to people. So these are growth-oriented government expenditures, and they are planned. They are planned. Where are they planned? Again, in the budget. In the budget, the provisions are made. Even the provisions of this much of road is to be laid, this much of rail track is to be laid. All these are government spendings. Now, what happens with the spending to the economy? Why is it so important? To understand this, one very simple example suffices. Uh, During the time when Lalu Prasad Yadav was ruling over Bihar, we saw that the government spending, which of course was part of the plan. So the budget, according to the budget, the amount of money used to come to the state government. But on the 31st of March, if you are unable to spend that money, it will go back to the center. And it went back to the center and no money was spent. So the economy was in shambles. And when Nitish Kumar took over, he just changed this scenario. He started spending all the money. So by 31st March, and you will see that during that fiscal years, every year, during the February, March, people start working like mad and they try to complete all the projects so that the money doesn't go back. And of course, that results in the money doesn't go back, new money comes in, the overall economy is pumped. How is it pumped? Because this government expenditure will lead to a demand. For example, if you are laying a road, obviously the labor will earn the money, the raw material suppliers will earn the money, and therefore these laborers will go to the market, buy products, and the market will start causing demand. When the overbridge is made, the cement industry is demand is increased, the iron industry demand is increased, the manufacturers of payloaders and other equipments, heavy machineries, they start increasing, their demand is increased because they are all required. And of course, the contractors start earning, the laborers start earning, and when they earn, they spend the money in the market only. So all products in the market, from clothes to food, everything, there is a increase in demand. And this increase in demand, which is caused through government spending, leads to a spurt of economic activities. And when these economic activities happen, overall there is a sense of goodness and there is a sense of improvement all around. And that is the reason why we find that uh, Bihar has done no miracle except spend the government earnings. And that has resulted in the economic GDP, which was in shambles, now going to the top in the country. Only government spending has caused this. So it is very important that the government spends, whether it is the state government or the central government, on planned expenditures. These planned expenditures are plans which are made, which will lead to growth. Obviously, good road will mean good economic activities, increase in demand of vehicles, and uh, increase of flow of products from the market to the consumers, increase in travel activities of the people, increase in so various service demands from hotel industry to everything. So it's all linked. And these infrastructure which is made, whether it is the infrastructure which the government develops, whether it is electricity or road or all, they all add to the economic activity, because these electricity will power the plants and the machineries, will cause an increase in demand of electrical products, and so on. So we find that the government spending is extremely important and very, very necessary. And this one activity alone can cause a change in demand. And this is also part of the fiscal policy, and government during the budgetary provision announces how it is going to spend the tax money. And that is so important. And that is how it is going to impact the demand. Now we come to the third one. The third one is also equally important. Government can take loans, just like normal people can take loans. We take loans based on our earnings because we have to repay these loans. The loans need to be repaid. And if you repay the loan, you have a good credit rating. So that is very equally important. Yeah, somebody has to say something? No, fine. So when it comes to the government taking loans, the government can take loans domestically also from the banks, from other economic and financial organizations, and it can also issue what are known as government bonds. You may have heard of government bonds. Government bonds are very often tax-free bonds which are issued for the public, and public will get a return just like all loans and investments. So the people can invest in the government bonds directly with the government. So the government has raised the loan from the public and it will repay the public. And if this is tax-free, the public is getting benefited. And because this money is going to be utilized for the purpose of the improvement of the economy of the country, therefore the tax-free is justifiable. And it can also approach the various banks, the RBI for loans. It can take loans from various financial institutions which are there in our country. It can also go and approach the international bodies for loans, and it has to repay to them also. Now, this usually the body which gives loan is the World Bank and the IMF. We do not accept usually money from other countries. One can, of course, that is also one way. And sometimes other governments just give an endowment also, and a loan also, depends. But basically, it's something which is to be avoided because it never comes without strings attached. But when it comes to the IMF or the World Bank, they are bodies made for the purpose, and we have paid to be their member. So we have put in money there and we have a right to take the money from there. So obviously these monies again is taken with a purpose and an objective. You may have seen this road is made by the funds of the World Bank, or certain other infrastructure which is made by the funds of the IMF or the World Bank. Obviously, we must understand the IMF is for a short period loan and World Bank is for a long period loan. If you look at the full form of World Bank, what is it? What is the full form of World Bank?
Full form, sir?
Full form of the World Bank?
The Industrial and Reconstruction Development Bank.
So it has five organs, like five subgroups, like it's combinedly known as World Bank Group. It has five different institutions. Are you
No,
talking
there
about
is
that?
only one institution. There are five institutions of the body, no doubt, but World Bank is only one. IBRD.
International Reconstruction and Development Bank.
Yes, good. Reconstruction and development. So the very objective of the bank is for reconstruction and development. Obviously, this was made after the World War, and obviously the World War led to a massive destruction, and therefore the word reconstruction. And why we fight the World War is because of, why do we fight the World War? Anybody? Why is there a crime? Why do people fight with each other? The same reason why we have the world war. Anyone can tell me why we fight, why we have crimes, or why we have the world wars? Well, the hint is already there. Development. If one part is highly developed, another part is underdeveloped. It is just like one person is very poor and the other person is very rich. So the one who is very poor, he will stake everything, even go to the extent of crime to take some money from the ultra rich. And when that happens, criminal activities are increased. So the one way of avoiding criminal activity is by bridging this gap, so that there are the poor people, their lot is improved and they are also well-to-do. If everybody is well-to-do, there will be no crime. So this is the concept which transpired on the world level also. If every country is developed, if every country is improved, there will be no world war. So that is the objective of the World Bank. Development. Development of which countries? Those which are less developed. Earlier we used to call them underdeveloped. Now we avoid saying underdeveloped because it is derogatory. Now we say it is less developed countries or LDCs, and the developing countries like India, which is already on the path to becoming a developed nation. But they are not yet developed. If every country is developed, there will be no world war. Yeah.
So I don't understand government loans and borrowings.
You didn't understand government loans and borrowings.
Yes,
Government,
sir.
that is what I'm explaining. Government loans and borrowings come from World Bank internationally and IMF, short-term loans from IMF and long-term loans from World Bank. And they all come with a purpose. When you go to take a loan, you have to state why you are taking a loan: for buying a car, for building a house, or for education. Even for individuals, it is the case. So country also, if it approaches somebody for a loan, they will ask for what purpose it is. And these loans are given for certain purposes. And when the project is completed, made, it starts earning, then you have to repay the loan. And when you repay the loan, you improve your credit rating, and therefore you can take more loans. And this helps. Now, when we take these loans, they all become part of the government spending. So they all help in increasing the demand. So through loans, ultimately the objective is to increase the demand, to improve the infrastructure, which will lead to growth and economic development. So the objective of taking the loan is development. The loans can be taken domestically from banks and financial institutions, and internationally from World Bank and IMF. Clear? Or is there still doubt? I assume it is clear. Huh? Clear? Fine.
I didn't
So,
hear you.
You didn't hear
I can
me?
hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, is it clear or not?
Yes, sir. Now it is clear.
Now it is clear. So we have
Yes,
covered
thank you.
3 instruments. We go to the 4th instrument, which is known as fiscal deficit. This is another additional amount of money which can come to the government through fiscal deficit. This fiscal deficit is something unique to the government only. As individuals, we cannot have a fiscal deficit for the simple reason we cannot print money. The government can print money. And of course, coins also is included in that. Mint. The government can mint money, we cannot mint money. Is it true or not? So how does fiscal...
Absolutely.
It is true. So how can government go for a fiscal deficit? For example, the government's earnings, including all the three instruments that we have listed, in fact, two instruments are for earnings. So including both the instruments, if the government earnings is, let us say, an amount X, and the planned expenditure of the government is both planned and non-planned, mind you, including both, the government expenditure comes to X plus 2. Then we say there is a fiscal deficit of 2 because we are spending 2 more than what we are earning. Now, how do we get this 2? Which is actually a shortcome in the budget. So our budget is mismatched. Our expenditure is more, earning is less. And this gap is covered through fiscal deficit, and it is known as fiscal deficit. It is not a good thing. It is not advisable to go for fiscal deficit, but governments are often compelled to go for fiscal deficit. And when that happens, as finance minister, Pranab Mukherjee was one of the advocates of trying to decrease the fiscal deficit, but there were political pressures because of which fiscal deficit has always happened. It is still happening. If you look at the budget, you will find we are in a fiscal deficit. And say this plus 2 is raised by printing money or by minting money. So the money is minted, and this is also part of the fiscal policy. The government decides to print X amount or 2 amount of money, and this is used for expenditure. Obviously, what does it do to the economy? It causes inflation, and it reduces the buying power of the existing money which the people have. So if you have 100 rupee, the government has printed some more money, the value of your 100 rupees will decrease. And this you will know when you go to buy in the market, because there will be inflation and you will be buying less with that money. If you keep it in the bank, we very often find that the value of the money in real terms has decreased. This happens because of this, because of the fiscal deficit which the government has created. So these are the 4 instruments of fiscal policy, which are the decisions made by the government. Obviously, certain decisions to reduce the level of fiscal deficit. The deficit has been going on in the government for the last few years, and to an extent they have reduced, but not yet eliminated. Of course, there is the reverse also which can happen. If the government earnings is more than what it is spending, then the additional amount of money is destroyed in the RBI. So RBI, if it can print money, it can also destroy the money which it already has, which will mean that the 100 rupees that you hold in your hand, the value is going to increase because government has destroyed a certain amount of money. And this happens in developed countries. And there it is possible to have a budgetary provision where the expenditure is less or more than the expenditure will be less than the earnings. So there will be a surplus budget. When you have a deficit budget, the opposite would be a surplus budget. And this surplus amount is destroyed by the government because they are not going to spend it. So the best is let the people get the benefit of that. So obviously, all these activities have an impact on the market, have an impact on the demand. And that is why these activities are important in stabilizing the economy. Now, when can we use this and how do we use it? For example, we had a recession in year 2007-8, which I'm sure some of you may remember. I remember it very distinctly. I was part of an organization at that time, and we had a lot of cost cutting going on. And of course, Pranab Mukherjee decided to waive off excise duty on automobiles. This was part of the fiscal policy. That resulted in a spurt of growth of automobile demand. And that caused a decrease in the recession. So through these instruments, we can cause the demand for certain products to grow up. And when that happens, we say that we have used the instrument to stabilize the policy. Now coming to, of course, this is the truth. This is something which you will find on the internet, that this has actually happened in the recession of 2007-8. The government actually did it. So obviously these instruments, even today there's a fiscal policy which is there, which is in practice, and which is targeting growth of the country's economy. Obviously, expenditure, I don't need to tell you. Income also, if you look at the economy survey, you will learn a lot of it. So this is about the fiscal policy. Who makes the fiscal policy? Anyone?
Finance Minister.
Excellent. Finance Minister makes the fiscal policy. The Minister of Finance, Government of India. Now we come to monetary policy. And who makes the monetary policy?
RBI.
RBI. So let us look at the
Also, before you move to the next topic, I have a question.
Please
May
go
I?
ahead and ask the question. You are welcome to.
Yes, sir. Sir, so
Hmm.
is it so that demand is the only determinant who impact the business cycle?
No. It is market actually. We have used the term market. We have also used the term demand because that is also part of the market. But it is the sometimes supply is equally important, and other factors are also. So actually, it is the market which has to support the economy. Then only there will be a GDP. So please, if you have this misconception that only demand is one way. Definitely, if there is a spurt in demand, it will impact a lot of things, from employment to everything. And when there is a decrease in demand, it can also impact employment. It can also cause havoc with the investment. It can cause havoc with the supplies in the market. So it is all connected. We cannot take economy in isolation. We study it in isolation, definitely, to understand that this demand is going to improve. But the impact is always all around. Clear?
All right. Yes, sir. But sir, what I noticed that through all these four, we are actually focusing on demand. Like in physical policies as well, we are focusing
Yeah,
on
I talked about demand, definitely. But this demand is going to have an impact on many other things, from prices to employment to investment to disinvestment, everything. Yes or no?
Yes, sir, indeed. Also, one
So
more
now,
question.
please go ahead.
Uh, could you please give an example for non-planned expenditure?
I've already told you, I'll repeat. Salaries given to government employments.
Okay.
What is that?
Non-planned government expenditure.
Non-planned expenditure.
So, one more thing.
Yeah.
By return, like as you said, that under non-planned expenditure, these are the expenditure that didn't fetch, or sorry, that don't fetch return. So,
Correct.
by return, Do we mean like because in your course of lecture you
No,
even
it
mentioned that.
basically return for the government is economic growth.
Okay, okay.
Okay, this is what we are going to talk about. So return
Alright.
for individuals could be different, and for government it can be different. So
Okay.
can you see the website that I have put on the screen?
Yes, sir. It is one of RBI.
It is one of RBI. And the right on top is the monetary policy, function-wise sites.
Yes,
Can you
sir.
see that?
Yes, sir.
And on the left-hand side, we have the current rates. These rates also belong to the monetary policy, the policy rates, the reserve ratios, the exchange rate. So the policy rates, we have the policy repo rate at 4%, reverse repo rate at 3.35%, marginal standing facility rate at 4.25%, and the bank rate at 4.25%. Okay, obviously we have to first understand what are these, and I'm going to tell you that also. But before that, let us look at the reverse reserve ratios. CRR is 3%. What is CRR? Anyone? Cash reserve ratio. And the SLR is 18%. What is SLR? Standing liquidity ratio. Exchange rate is not part of the monetary policy. Let us look at the monetary policy itself. Overview. So overview, the monetary policy refers to the policy of the central bank, which is the RBI, not the Central Bank of India, which is different, which is a bank, not the central bank in functional terms. RBI is the Central Bank of India in functional terms with regard to use of monetary instruments under its control to achieve the goals specified in the Act. And this Act is the RBI Act of 1934. That is, and it is vested with the responsibility of conducting the monetary policy. It is allowed. And obviously, the objective of this monetary policy is to again cause expansion. Go back to the slide and you will recall we were actually spending and contracting. That is what it can do. Let us look at the goals of the monetary policy. Price stability is a necessary condition for precondition to sustainable growth. So one objective is sustainable growth. And for that, just like demand is one way of improving the economy, price stability is one way of sustainable growth. So the government, through the monetary policy, tries to achieve the price stability. And when price is stable, the demand will also be stable, should be stable, then only it will work. They are all interrelated with each other. So fiscal policy and monetary policy actually always go hand in hand, and they must be directed in the same direction. Then only they will be able to have proper impact on the market. And obviously the objective is to have the right impact on the market for economic growth. So obviously in May 16, there was a flexible inflation targeting framework was implemented. That means inflation target is to be set by the government of India, and RBI will once in 5 years, and accordingly the bank will work. That is the consumer price index, CPI, 4% inflation. Obviously we will see certain limited inflation is good for the economy. And of course, there is a tolerance limit of 2%, so it can go to the 6%. When we look at the monetary policy framework, we find that it makes the monetary policy framework for the country. It sets the rate of repo rate, which it does after studying the macroeconomic situation and of course the liquidity conditions. And the repo rate transmits through the money market to the entire financial system. Obviously, once the repo rates are announced on a day-to-day basis, it is target is achieved through the weighted average rate, a call rate, which is WACR. And of course, let us understand the repo rate. Repo rate is the rate at which banks can borrow from the RBI. Obviously, the banks are not going to borrow from the RBI normally, but when they have a problem or a crash crunch, they will and they need to borrow money from the RBI. Reverse repo rate would be when the RBI borrows money from the banks. That also happens, and both these rates are fixed by RBI. I think it's going to take more time, so we will stop here and we'll continue in the next class. If there's any questions, please ask, and we'll continue from here. First, let me take the attendance. Any questions?